He is an American master. Wynton Marsalis, at age 49, arguably the best-known living jazz artist and leader of the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra, probably the best big band at work today. As we reported last January, they're on the road constantly, bringing America's most distinctive art form to the world, most recently to London, Berlin, and Havana. We were lucky enough to tag along, a joyous assignment if there ever was one, trying to get a sense of this band of brothers, their music, and their effect as unofficial ambassadors.
The story will continue in a moment.
Marsalis is the leader of the band, but he's buried in the back row. It's interesting, when you guys take the stage, you're never front and center.
No. I play fourth trumpet. That's my role. I like it. I'm comfortable playing in the trumpet section. It started because I can't really conduct. I'm not a good conductor.
He tried until a brave member of the band delivered the verdict.
Every time I would start conducting, if I would mess something up, he would look down at his music and go, that meant go get back in the trumpet section.
And there Wynton Marsalis stays, storming his way through some of the most difficult, hair-raising music in the jazz repertoire.
I like pressure. I like that. I like the challenge. I don't have a problem with it at all. I like the feeling of nervousness. I like the feeling that something counts. And I like to be tested.
Soloing on tunes like this, a bass player said many years ago, is like trying to change the fan belt on your car with the engine running.
Man, when you're playing with other people, it's such a combination of emotion. It's so intense. And when you make a tender statement or something that's real sweet, or you just caress a note, that takes more intensity. It's powerful.
It's hard to believe the boy wonder from New Orleans, who's been startling both jazz and classical audiences since his teens, is now pushing 50. He's won 9 Grammys and a Pulitzer Prize for music, and logged more miles around the world than your average Secretary of State. You've spent 30 years, since you were a teenager, in the music business. That makes you, in a certain way, a very young elder statesman.
I don't feel like that. They would tease me and call me the old man since I was in my late 20s.
It was his old man, Ellis, a pianist, a New Orleans legend, who passed the jazz gene on to Wynton and 3 of his 5 brothers. Wynton himself, who's never married, has 4 children. Back in 1995, this young old man sat down with our late colleague Ed Bradley to talk about his talent.
How have you changed over the last 15 years of playing out here every day?
Oh man, a lot. I'm calmer. When I was young, I was always excited, got to do it today. And I was always paranoid about not ever being able to play good enough. Never being able to play good enough.
I'm going to ask you the same question that our friend Ed Bradley asked you 15 years ago. How has your playing changed in the years since?
I think just the natural wisdom that comes with age. Also, I think I have a different type of weight in my sound. In just the 15 years, I know more music. So when I'm playing, I feel like it reflects a deeper knowledge. I think I hear better, too.
Their mission, his and the band's, is to keep jazz alive, writing new music and paying homage to the treasures of the past.
Let me hear the brass at letter Q.
Like Marsalis, most of his Lincoln Center musicians were classically trained, equally at home with Bach and the blues. They come from big cities and small towns, youngsters like pianist Dan Nimmer, 28, and veterans like Joe Temperley, an 81-year-old Scotsman.
When you play in a big band, you sacrifice a lot. With some of the greatest soloists, they know they're going to play one solo a night. It's a tremendous sacrifice.
One night you'll find them at New York's historic Apollo Theater, playing the score for a silent movie about trumpeter Louis Armstrong. The next night, who knows?
We've played everywhere from prisons to parks, picnics, old folks' homes, nursery schools, on the subway. I spent more time on the road than at home. I love to be in a different place.
You have a certain problem with flying, though, don't you?
I'm afraid of that. That makes it more difficult.
When you travel across this country.
I travel across the country.
By car.
I love it, too.
You won't get on a plane.
I get to stop at people's homes. I get to get good meals. I get to connect with all the people I've known.
He took to the car after a white-knuckle flight years ago. Traveling overseas, though, he has no choice but to bite the bullet and fly.
I don't really have to steel myself, especially if I'm with my guys, and they're teasing me the whole time. So I have to
put on a brave face.
Act like I'm not afraid of it. But some of the ones that are teasing me are afraid too. So we're all acting.
It's Tuesday, so it must be London. Wherever they travel, Marsalis and company are hailed as America's best. And local music royalty, like rocker Eric Clapton, come to pay their respects. And chatting in the shadow of the Tower Bridge, Marsalis says that for all his renown and decades of experience, his baby face gets in the way. Like this trumpet player walks into a bar, and
a young lady said, "Well, sir, we have to see some ID." I started laughing. I'm saying, "With my sons, you know, they're old enough to drink." I was like, "These are my kids." And she said, "Well, I have to see some ID, sir." And they just shake their heads and say, "Boy."
Somebody was pulling your leg.
No, man, I'm telling you.
He is a walking encyclopedia of jazz history, the legends and their music. The London concerts focus on jazz giants of the past, their work a revelation to listeners who seldom experience the power of a big band at full throttle. There's music from the 1920s by the deliciously named Jelly Roll Morton.
Raconteur, Pool Shark, first great composer of jazz.
There's the music of Benny Carter, a founding father of the big band sound.
He's a great arranger and composer, a great gentleman. We had the privilege of playing under him, but also a guy who could whip some behind if it needed to be whipped.
And the maestro himself, Duke Ellington.
The master from Washington, D.C.
To Marsalis and many others, the greatest American composer ever.
The broadest variety of pieces, the greatest depth of insight into the nature of the American character. A love of our country and its people.
A quote from Duke Ellington, who says, "By and large, jazz is like the kind of man you wouldn't want your daughter to associate with."
Well, that's true, too. It deals with matters of romance. It deals with sexual things.
There is a certain seductive nature to the music.
Man, if you don't have that, your music is not worth listening to. Yeah, you have to have that edge. You have to have that sexuality, that sensuality. You have to have that primitive feeling. And the more primitive you have, the more refined your concept is, the more primitive you have to be.
Practically from childhood, he's worked back and forth between jazz and classical music. His latest composition, the Swing Symphony, combines the two. The Lincoln Center Band and the Berlin Philharmonic played the premiere, a survey of how American jazz evolved, with echoes of Ellington, Charlie Parker, and other jazz greats. Does it sadden you that, for the most part, young people may not even know who you're talking about when you say Charlie Parker or Duke Ellington?
It saddens me that people my age may not know that. And it is a comment on the failure of our education system to deal with cultural education, not just Duke Ellington, Walt Whitman. The list goes on and on. So it saddens me for us as a nation because we have such a rich cultural heritage and we would be so much the better for it and we would make such better decisions if we understood what brings us together.
Jazz at Lincoln Center does its part to keep the heritage alive, bringing high school bands to New York for classes with the pros, and for a chance to strut their stuff beneath the sophisticated eye of Ellington himself. But these are the lucky ones. Across most of the country, cultural programs in the schools range from spotty to non-existent.
The arts are our collective human heritage. You're a better person if you know what Shakespeare was talking about. If you know what Beethoven struggled with, if you know about Matisse, if you know what Louis Armstrong actually is saying through his horn, you're better. Because it's just like you get to speak with the wisest people who ever lived.
Maestro Marsalis speaks his universal language with his band, swinging in the rain with Marsalis sounding for all the world like Louis Armstrong, New Orleans' other favorite son. But this is London. It's a moment that tells you all you need to know about the music's infectious appeal.
I want us to give 100% all the time. We know that we're here to serve the music and to serve everyone who comes to check our music out.
When we come back, we'll be checking in with the band as it moves on to that forbidden city to most Americans, Havana.